Hello, I welcome you all in this presentation. This presentation is related with the topic casting, and we will be talking about the different technical aspects related with the sand molding. We know that the desired size and shape of the casting, which is free from the defect, can be achieved by preparing a mold. Mold of the sand is prepared in case of the sand mold casting, and it should have, but to have the casting which is free from the defect and is of the desired size, shape, finish and the desired dimensions, it is necessary that the sand mold is having the certain characteristics and certain properties. So, what are the properties which are important for making the casting with the desired size, shape, finish and free from defects? And for this purpose it is required that the molds have certain properties and certain characteristics. Among these, like say one of the property is, one of the characteristic is permeability. Another is there are various conditions under which strength is important. So, under this we have strength of the mold. Of course, there are different terms which are used to for defining the strength depending upon the condition of the mold, like green strength, dry strength, and each of these strength have has their own purpose and they play a specific role. And hot strength. After this, another important property is refractoriness. Then we have collapsibility. So, what is the role which is performed by these characteristics, and why are these being considered important for making the casting which is of the desired size, finish and free from defects? We know that permeability is about the kind of pores or voids existing in the mold walls. So, through these pores actually allow escaping of gases from the mold to the atmosphere. So, we know that when molten metal is poured into the mold, before pouring there will be air inside the mold. Molten metal being poured will be having the metal plus the gases in dissolved state in the mold. We know that at a high temperature the gases can dissolve into the molten metal. So, the gas is dissolved either in the furnace or while handling, these gases will be present with the molten metal, and during the solidification these gases are released or these are rejected. So, these gases should come out. At the same time, the interaction between the molten metal plus mold wall interaction also results the evolution of the gases. So, these gases being generated due to the interaction between the mold and the molten metal, these gases also should get space for escaping, and this escaping is facilitated through these pores which are present in the sand mold. So, the gases will be getting the pores or channels for coming out of the mold. So, if the permeability or which permeability is the characteristics which permits the escaping of the gases present in the mold due to the variety of regions, such as the atmospheric air or the gases in dissolved state which are released during the solidification, or the gas is being generated due to the mold metal reaction. So, these gases must be in position to escape through the proper pores which are present in the sand mold, and if it is not so, then all these gases will have the tendency for entrapment. So, the gases trapped in the mold wall within the mold will be leading to the presence of these gases in the casting itself, and these gases may be in presence of the fine porosity or big blow holes. These are also termed as gaseous inclusions. So, these are the defects, and these presence of these defects make the casting of the lower capability in terms of the ability to take up the load or sensitivity for the corrosion, or the increased tendency of the failure during the service. So, in order to avoid such undesirable features related with the presence of the gases in the casting, it is necessary that the permeability of the mold is quite good. Then we will come to the another important characteristic, which is the strength. Strength of the mold is important, certainly, because whatever is the shape of the mold, that will be retained under the pressure or metallostatic pressure of the molten metal only if the mold is of the desired strength, and if the mold is not of the desired strength or proper strength, then under the effect of the metallostatic pressure, the mold walls will be damaged, and this damage can occur in the different forms. So, say this is the molten metal filled in the mold cavity, and these are the walls of the sand mold. If the walls of the sand mold are not of the requisite strength, then they will not be able to sustain this metallostatic pressure which will be acting on the mold walls, and under such conditions there can be shifting of the mold walls, or there can be so this shift or you can say there is a change in position of the mold walls. This may be all along one surface, or this may be very localized depending upon the geometry and the weakness where does it exist. So, if this zone is poor in terms of the strength, then the settling of the shifting of the mold wall will be occurring in this region, and this will be changing the shape of the casting. So, but under what conditions strength of the mold is checked as per the condition. So, whenever we make the mold of the sand using like say sand plus moisture plus clay, these are the three important ingredients, plus a small amount of the other ingredients are also added in order to have the desired characteristics which are specific in nature. So, when you see the moisture, sand and the clay are mixed and then mold is made. So, just after its preparation, the mold, whatever strength it is there, means the mold strength of the mold mold strength when it has moisture. At that state, the strength of the mold is termed as green strength. So, green strength, you see, we have just prepared a mold of the sand of the molding sand, and it has a lot of moisture. So, in that case, the strength of the mold matters primarily for the size and shape retention, during the handling. So, freshly prepared mold walls should not get damaged during the handling, as well as the strength of the mold also, this green strength of the mold also matters when the mold is used directly for pouring the molten metal. Means the green sand mold is poured with the molten metal directly without permitting the baking or removal of the moisture. So, in that case, freshly prepared mold is poured with the molten metal directly, and after the solidification we get the casting. So, in that situation, the green strength becomes important, not just from the size and shape retention point of view, but it should also carry the load of the molten metal. So, the green strength of the mold becomes important in that case. So, green strength of the mold is the strength of the mold when it has moisture, and it is important for the two situations: one, to retain the size and shape when the moisture is present, one, and two, when and the retention of the size and shape, especially when the molten metal is to be poured into the mold. So, it is also required that the mold wall should not just retain their size and shape on its own weight during the handling, but they should also take the load of the molten metal effectively. The another important is another condition in which strength is checked is the dry strength. So, since the green strength becomes quite low for taking the weight of the molten metal, especially in case of the large casting. So, it becomes important that the strength of the mold is increased, and for that purpose normally the baking of the green sand mold is done in the range of 150 to 350 degrees centigrade for 8 to 48 hours. So, purpose of this is that all the moisture is driven off and strength is increased. Once the strength is increased, it can take the load of the molten metal, especially in case of the large castings, effectively, but this process is long. So, the strength of the mold under the conditions when there is no moisture or moisture has been driven off, at that state strength of the mold is termed as dry strength. Hot strength of the mold is also important because, and let us understand what is the hot strength. We know that whenever any mold is prepared, whether it is green or it is dry, means the green is mold when the moisture is present and dry mold when moisture has been driven off. So, means the mold is not having any moisture, but when the molten metal is poured into the mold, the temperature of skin of the mold will be increasing up to the temperature of the molten metal. So, basically the mold wall temperature rises up to the temperature of the molten metal. So, at that a strength of the mold actually matters for carrying the weight of the molten metal. So, a strength of the mold walls at the temperature of molten metal actually is important for carrying the weight of the molten metal, because in any way whether it is green strength or the dry strength, when the molten metal is poured there will be rise in temperature of the mold wall, and at that state what is the strength of the mold, that is actually important for retention of the size and shape of the mold. So, hot strength is important, and sometimes special ingredients are added for increasing the hot strength of the mold. Refractoriness of the mold is about the ability to sustain high temperature of the molten metal. And if say this is the mold prepared of the sand, and if the skin of the mold or of the mold sand mold does not have required refractoriness, in that case it will start fusing as soon as it comes in contact of the molten metal. So, this fusion can be avoided only if the sand mold is of the required is having required refractiveness, means it can sustain the high temperature without getting fused with the molten metal, because once the fusion of the molten mold wall starts, then it will form the part of the casting, and the shape of the casting will also get modified. So, this is a this will be a situation of the wastage of the material as well as the change in shape of the casting. So, it is necessary that the mold is having the required refractiveness, and it depends upon the number of factors, like the type of clay has been selected, the size of the sand grains which are there, and the temperature of the molten metal. So, we need to see that there is a proper compatibility in terms of the refractiveness between the molten metal being used for the casting as well as the refractiveness of the mold. Another important factor is the collapsibility. So, collapsibility, we know that this collapsibility is important at this after the solidification of the casting. What we know that according to this property, what we expect that the mold will collapse or it will be crushed, collapse. So, ability to get collapsed under either the residual stresses or externally applied stresses, the mold should get collapsed so that it eases out the residual stresses which are being developed due to the contraction, and the casting is taken out of the mold easily after the collapse. So, the molding sand with good collapsibility reduces the chances of the hot tearing, because during the contraction of the casting the mold will collapse, and it will, so that it will reduce the chances of the hot tearing as well as it will also reduce the tendency for the development of the residual stresses, and it will facilitate the easy withdrawal of casting from the mould. So this is what is facilitated when the collapsibility is good. Sometimes like sawdust is added in the moulding sand. So, it becomes collapsible because the sawdust will be burned out at a high temperature as soon as it comes in contact of the hot high temperature molten metal. So, these are some of the properties which are important for the sand mould in order to prepare the castings which are free from the defects and they are of the required size and shape. So, now we will be seeing that what are the important constituents like moulding sand, what are the constituents of the moulding sand. So, basically there are 3 important ingredients besides some additives. So, main ingredients are like silica sand or the sand, then clay and moisture. These are the main ingredients for the moulding sand, and apart from that there are some additives. Additives are used to increase the specific characteristics like this may be like saw dust, cereal binder, and the powdered graphite. So, these offer some specific characteristics about which we will talk later on. So, basically silica sand, this is you can say the river sand which has the silica of 90 to 96% normally, and this has a variety of the sizes. So, the size may range from like say few micrometer to few millimeter, and these are present in variety of the shapes. So, both these characteristics are important from the moulding properties point of view. So, shapes may be very irregular just like this, or very angular, round like this. These are the some of the shapes, and these characteristics affect the number of properties related with the sand mould. Among the clay, I will talk about the sand and the properties which are affected by the silica sand, and then coming to the clay. Clay provides the required strength or power of bonding between silica grains. It also so this is what is their bonding, and moisture. This clay can be added is from like say 5 to 15%, and the moisture is normally added 2 to 8% for the two purposes. One, it activates the clay for the bonding purpose, and it offers the required, so that the activation of the clay results in the proper bonding, and when the washer is added appropriately, it results in the desired plasticity to the sand mold, so that desired complicated shapes can also be realized through the addition of these ingredients. Coming to the different characteristics related with related with these ingredients. So, like the size of the sand particles. So, if the size or like coarse sand particles results in the increased permeability, increased refractoriness, ability to sustain high temperature is good, and both these are adversely affected with the fine size particles. Similarly, the angular round particles they reduce permeability, but increase the strength of the mold. But irregular shape particles results in the increased permeability. So, when the round particles are round, then permeability is reduced because the particles get packed during the molding effectively, which reduces the pores and which in turn reduces the permeability. But the increased packing and the closer contact between the different sand grains results in the increased strength. Regular shape particles will be leading lot of voids and spaces between the sand grains during the molding, so which will be leading to the increased permeability. Between increased permeability of the mold. Coming to the clay is added as I have mentioned in 5 to 10%. So, there are two types of the clay. One is kaolinite. This is one of the binders which has good refractoriness of like say 1750 to 1787 degrees centigrade, the temperature range in which it can sustain. This is the melting point above which it will be adversely affecting the mold sand properties. And another very commonly used is bentonite clay, and it's of the low melting point. So, like melting point is like 1250 to 1300 degrees centigrade. So, for most of the low temperature metal systems bentonite is preferred, and while for the high temperature systems, high temperature metal of the casting, the kaolinite is preferred. The water absorption capacity of the bentonite is much better than the kaolinite. So, this results in the good bonding power for the molding sand. That is why the bentonite is preferred over the kaolinite for the low temperature casting systems or metal casting. Coming to the moisture, that is another important thing. So, as I have told, it is 88 to 2 to 8% moisture is added, and about 2 to 3% actually moisture is needed for activating the clay, so that desired bonding power can be realized for having the good strength. And for the rest of the water, remaining water up to limited amount, like say remaining 4 to 5% is that is 4 to 5% helps in increasing the plasticity of the sand mould, plasticity of sand mould of the moulding sand of the sand, so that the sand follows the curve or the geometry of the pattern in order to achieve the fine intricate shapes which are desired in the casting. So, plasticity in that way is important for realizing the shape in the mould cavity. So, here now I will summarize this presentation. In this presentation, basically I have talked about the characteristics which are desired in the sand mould and the important ingredients of the sand moulding sand, and the way by which these ingredients affect the moulding sand mould characteristics. Thank you for your attention.